Another criminal charge against Trump, one that may well stick and change American history.
The defendants engaged in a criminal racketeering enterprise to overturn Georgia's presidential election result.
Georgia has charged him and 18 of his associates with conspiring to overturn the 2020 elections under state law, meaning he couldn't pardon himself even if he was re-elected president. Dan is in Washington to explain how serious this is for the former president and what impact it could have ahead of next year's election. Also on News at 10 tonight. First, it was Northern Ireland. Now it's police forces in England who suffer a huge data breach, this time revealing details of victims of crime. A reflection of the times when the rise in cost of living means surging take-home pay still doesn't make the cut.
You're changing that boy's life. No, he's changing mine.
How the feel-good film telling the story of an adopted African-American kid could have blindsided Hollywood with a fresh twist in the tale. And dawn is breaking down under on match day with the Lionesses on the brink of history. They prepare to face the Matildas in the World Cup semi-final down under.
This is ITV News at 10 with Rageh Omaar.
Good evening. In President Trump's mind, being charged with more crimes may actually boost his support and help him get re-elected to the White House. He said as much after he appeared in court in Washington 12 days ago. He boasted then that he needed one more indictment to win the election. Well, now he's got his wish, and this one is likely to be televised. He's been charged in Georgia with trying to overthrow the result of the presidential vote there in 2020. Remember the phone calls asking a Georgia official to find him 11,000 more votes? Well, under laws meant to rid Georgia of mafia mobs, Mr. Trump has now been charged along with 18 of his henchmen and women, and this one has serious implications because if he is found guilty, he can't pardon himself even if he returns to the White House.
By the way, there's no way we lost Georgia. There's no way.
Trump always had Georgia on his mind.
In Georgia, I won by a lot.
For months after it was confirmed he narrowly lost the state.
It's also clear that we have won Georgia.
Donald J. Trump repeated the lie that he'd won.
I challenged the election in Georgia, which I have every right to do, which I was right about, frankly.
But it wasn't just these false claims which have now resulted in a fourth criminal indictment. According to prosecutors, there was a conspiracy to steal the result. Late last night, after 2.5 years of investigations, the consequences were condensed into 98 pages. A dossier of dodginess put before a judge who, with the stroke of his pen, started what will be one of the most consequential trials in US history. It will be televised, it will be historic, and it may decide not just the election, but the entire future of America.
The indictment alleges that rather than abide by Georgia's legal process for election challenges, the defendants engaged in a criminal racketeering enterprise to overturn Georgia's presidential election result.
Donald Trump has been charged under state racketeering laws usually used to prosecute organised crime. The 98-page indictment sets out a complex conspiracy to overturn the election results in Georgia by committing theft, computer trespass, forgery of documents and perjury, as well as multiple lies set out in the 41 counts. It accuses not only Donald Trump but 18 others, including his then Chief of Staff Mark Meadows and former New York Mayor Rudy Giuliani, as well as several lawyers and Trump loyalists. Today, Trump's press secretary echoed his angry reaction to the charges.
It's really an egregious case of prosecutorial misconduct, something we've never seen in our country. This was a show me the man, I'll show you the crime, which is what they've been doing against President Trump, harassing him, his campaign, his family for 8 years now.
The election race in Georgia was among the tightest in the country. Biden won by less than 1/4%. But President Trump refused to accept the result, making this now infamous 67-minute call to the man in charge of Georgia's voting system, demanding more votes were found for him.
I just want to find 11,780 votes, which is one more than we have, because we won the state.
It wasn't just one phone call. Richard Barron was the lead election official, subjected to a torrent of threats from the public and huge pressure from local Republican politicians.
It's really sickening that you have somebody that can't accept the fact that he lost an election and that he tried to do whatever he could to overturn the results. And so if he's been indicted, and he deserves it.
The case also centres on this alleged breach of election security in Coffee County, Georgia. Local Republican leader Kathy Latham allowed computer experts and Trump operatives into a secure voting area to interfere with election systems, even taking a selfie with them. She was one of the people who posed as a fake elector, trying to falsely certify the result for Donald Trump, a crime for which she's now been indicted. Donald Trump may think the best way to make all this go away is to win next year. But even as president, he couldn't pardon himself of these state crimes, which would carry a minimum 5-year sentence. Dan Rivers, News at 10, Washington.
Well, the former president now faces 4 different criminal cases. On top of these latest charges of attempting to overthrow the 2020 election loss in the state of Georgia, there is a second state charge connected with his payments of so-called hush money to the adult film star Stormy Daniels in New York to buy her silence. There are also 2 federal charges, one over the alleged hoarding of classified documents at his Mar-a-Lago estate in Florida, and a second regarding his involvement in the January 6th storming of the Capitol building in Washington. It sets a pretty full diary for Donald Trump. The Capitol riot case has a provisional court date in January next year. The prosecution in the Georgia case have proposed a speedy process to reach trial by at least February. The hush payments case could start in March, while the Mar-a-Lago classified documents trial is set for May. Let's go back to Washington, where Dan is. Dan, I mean... heck of a lot of dates in the diary for Donald Trump. The first, which is likely to be another day in court. When is that likely to be, do you think?
Well, look, the district attorney, Fannie Willis, has said it's got to be before noon of Friday of next week, of the 25th. So they've got 10 days, all of these 19 defendants, to surrender themselves to the court authorities and appear for this initial arraignment. Now, it appears that means that they have some degree of agency, of choice of when they decide to appear. Now, if you were being mischievous, you might think, well, Donald Trump may decide to pick next Wednesday. Why next Wednesday? Because that's when all the other Republican candidates for the nomination will be taking part in a debate in Milwaukee, and he may decide he wants the spotlight firmly on him in court. The other thing to remember, Rageh, is that this initial arraignment, because it's in a state court, will be televised. We will see Donald Trump on camera in court, presumably pleading not guilty to these charges.
Well, that will be a historic moment. But the former president has long argued that every new charge makes his position in getting re-elected stronger. Does this latest charge change that in any way, do you think?
Well, look, I think there are significant questions about how this will play out, because essentially this entire trial, as I said, is going to be on camera, and the prospect of seeing Donald Trump cross-examined by a hostile lawyer for days, potentially weeks, may begin to shift his lead in the polls. He's miles ahead at the moment. More than 50% of Republican voters would decide to have him as their candidate as opposed to all the others. The other big factor also is money. He is spending an awful lot of money, or the committee trying to get him re-elected is spending an awful lot of money on lawyers' fees, $27 million just this year alone. Can they carry on with this level of financial attrition? Some big questions there.
Extraordinary developments. Thanks, Dan. Now, it has not been a good week for police forces replying to freedom of information requests. Two more, Norfolk and Suffolk, have also accidentally released personal data, not about their own officers and staff like the Police Service of Northern Ireland did, but about members of the public. These include innocent victims of crime, witnesses and people who have been suspected but not convicted of crimes, more than 1,200 in all.
Another day, another data breach. The culprits this time, the neighbouring forces of Norfolk and Suffolk, with victims including those who suffered sexual assault, who are guaranteed anonymity by law. It brought this apology and attempt at reassurance.
I absolutely understand the concerns from the public and how they may be feeling around their confidence in reporting to us in the future. I would reassure people we've already taken the action that we can to ensure this doesn't happen again.
The blunder came in response to freedom of information requests from April 2021 to March of last year. In all, the personal details of 1,230 people were released. Victims, witnesses and suspects in cases of sexual offences, domestic abuse and hate crime. Rukmini and her husband believe they're being targeted by racially motivated criminals. Their home has been repeatedly attacked. She says the thought of police revealing their details only makes her more fearful.
Before, I'm not hesitated, I just go straight away if I had any concern or if I had anything to share with police. But I will think twice before I share with police now.
This latest data disaster doesn't carry the same dangers as the naming of Northern Ireland police officers, but it follows the revelation that the Cumbrian Constabulary also identified their staff and their salaries. A pattern is emerging.
Obviously, there's an important wake-up call here, and it's likely we may even see other incidents come to light because of the spotlight being shone on this circumstance. That will obviously be terrible in the short term, but that's good for raising the standards and improving things across the organisation.
Police insist there is nothing to suggest the information was widely accessed. But if the custodians of the law cannot safeguard confidential information, then profound questions are raised about trust and competence. John Ray, News at 10, Norfolk.
Living in the suburbs and being nice to the neighbours could be regarded as being the perfect cover. 3 Bulgarians who have been in Britain for years have been arrested for allegedly breaking the Official Secrets Act. Biza Zambazov and Katrin Ivanova, who were living in Harrow, and a third person picked up in Great Yarmouth, have been charged with having false identity documents for improper use. All 3 appeared at the Old Bailey a fortnight ago. They haven't yet entered pleas to the charges and are remanded in custody. Now, it sounds like a good thing, right? The highest pay rises on record, 7.8%, but it isn't for most people. That's because pay last month still hadn't overtaken rises in the cost of living. And that's not all, because today's figures also suggest the Bank of England's medicine of higher interest rates to bring down inflation isn't working as well as it's hoped. We'll get the latest inflation figures tomorrow, but if today's figures on pay is anything to go by, interest rates are now odds on to go higher still.
Right, so what are we doing today?
Worrying about whether our wages will cover our costs. The staff here at the Pixel Rose salon in Swindon are like the rest of us, and the salon's owner might be cutting hair, but she isn't cutting wages.
I think my wage bills have gone up by around about 15%, to then obviously consider pay rises as well for the team when I don't actually take one for myself. You know, it's been tough. If I hadn't have obviously respected that pay rise, they could easily have gone looking elsewhere.
The latest figures show that private sector wage growth has surpassed inflation for the first time in almost 2 years. But a couple of doors down at the barber shop, people aren't feeling better off. Did you get a pay rise?
I did. I didn't notice much about it. Although you get an increase, it doesn't really subsidise well because it makes no difference really. So that's sort of where I'm at the moment.
But Kieran isn't alone. Average weekly earnings, excluding bonuses, hit an annual growth rate of 7.8% during the 3 months to June. That's the highest level on record. And wage growth year on year has been steadily increasing over the past 18 months. but it had been well below the rate of inflation until now. In real terms, the average salary has gone up in the last 18 months from just under £29,000 to almost £32,000, an increase of 10%.
Hi, how are you doing?
No post-holiday blues for the Prime Minister, who's back at work today after a trip to California, emphasising that cutting inflation remains the priority.
We are making progress. I'm not complacent, and we'll have more numbers this week which hopefully show continued downward movement on inflation. But we've got to stick to the plan. That means taking the right, responsible decisions for the economy, being responsible with borrowing, with public sector pay.
Today's figures also show a slight increase in the unemployment rate and that job vacancies are falling, leading to some experts predicting the Bank of England will have to act.
I would be very surprised if we don't get a further increase in interest rates, even if the inflation figures that come out tomorrow do show falling inflation. I think the question is going to be, does the bank keep increasing interest rates until it's clear that wage growth has turned down? And I would expect that at least some people on the committee would want to do that.
New inflation statistics are out tomorrow, which in conjunction with today's data will help paint a more accurate picture of the current state of the economy.
Well, Shihab is back from Swindon. As you were saying, we're getting the latest inflation figures tomorrow, and that's going to be a key determinant of what happens to the interest rates, right?
Yeah, absolutely. The Bank of England will look at a number of different data sets before they make their decision, but inflation is obviously one of the most important ones. Tomorrow's figures will be crucial. At the moment, forecasters are predicting that inflation will come down. We don't know by how much, and the size of that change will be a huge decision-making factor for the Bank of England. However, after what we've seen today, there'll be significant concerns about that so-called wage price spiral, that situation where wages go up. It means that businesses start charging more. It means that people are then paying more for things, and then they need their wages to go up again, and it becomes an almost self-fulfilling prophecy. Exactly. And that's something the government has been concerned about. It's something the Bank of England has been concerned about. Markets today are anticipating interest rates are now going to go up because the Bank of England is going to have to react to it. Today, someone told me that it was a 99% certainty, but again, it is just a prediction. The other concern for the government particularly will be the pension triple lock. That means that state pensions have to go up because it's a pledge from the government by whatever is the highest out of inflation, wage growth, or 2.5%. If wages continue to go up, it will have a huge impact on government budgets. Heading into a general election, the Chancellor will be looking to spend money, potentially make tax cuts, has been pledged. That will make things a lot more difficult. Essentially, tomorrow's figures are going to be how the Bank of England, reacts in the next few weeks or so. But this could have a long-term impact heading into a general election.
There's a double bind for the government. Thanks very much, Shihab. Well, one thing that won't be going up as much as inflation is the cost of train travel in England. Traditionally, they are linked to the RPI measure of inflation for July, which is due out tomorrow, as we've just been hearing. But the Department of Transport says the increase for next year won't be that high, and they'll be introduced later than normal in March rather than early January. Now, there is still much anguish to come in the Hawaiian island of Maui as more of the missing from last week's wildfires are declared dead. The governor says to expect the number to rise by 10 or 20 every day. But that anguish has already hardened to anger about how unprepared the island was to cope with the crisis. President Biden has responded to criticism that he's not doing enough in the aftermath by saying he will visit Hawaii as soon as he can without his visit interrupting the recovery work.
There is little left of Lahaina. The fire consumed people's homes. Now toxins have contaminated the water supply of Western Maui. Unsafe to drink it or even to wash with it. There is no electricity, no phone signal, and no sign of life. A whole town incinerated. We find one man on a hill overlooking Lahaina trying to get enough signal to contact his family.
We really do need help, you know what I mean? The town is gone. The town is gone. I'm heartbroken, bro. I'm heartbroken. Words cannot explain because I keep hearing of, people I know that I care about is still unattended for, And up to this point right now, if they're not attended, they're not here anymore.
Eyewitnesses say it started when strong winds knocked over power lines. A spark on the dry grasslands quickly escalated into America's deadliest wildfire for over a century. There is grief here in Lahaina, but there is also anger. People criticising those early warning systems that were supposed to give them time to evacuate. But the fire spread so quickly here that by the time it reached their homes, it was already too late. As the search for bodies continues, a search for answers now begins. The governor of Hawaii has, in part, blamed climate change.
That level of destruction in a fire hurricane, something new to us in this age of global warming, was the ultimate reason that so many people perished.
But survivors of the fire have told us this was not a natural disaster. It was a man-made disaster waiting to happen.
This was absolutely preventable. You have fallow sugarcane fields that are dry with no fire breaks. We have power poles like rotting and they'd fall down in like lesser windstorms.
And you want answers now, you want accountability.
I want accountability. It destroyed more than half of the people we know, and just now like we're seeing the pictures of we're seeing the faces, the pictures of the people we lost.
There has also been criticism of the US aid response to Maui.
My wife Jill and I are going to travel to Hawaii as soon as we can. That's what I've been talking to the governor about. I don't want to get in the way. I've been to too many disaster areas, but I want to go and make sure we got everything they need. I want to be sure we don't disrupt the ongoing recovery efforts.
An entire community is gone. The scale of destruction here is horrifying. Now ashes and anger are all that's left in Lahaina. Peter Smith, News at 10, Maui.
And Japan is now enduring extreme weather, the wind and rain unleashed by a typhoon. There have been floods and power cuts after the tropical storm hit central Japan and then headed north. Travel by air and land was badly affected during what is a traditionally busy Buddhist holiday week. And it isn't over yet. More than a foot of water is expected to fall in the next few hours. If the life story of an American footballer born into hardship, adopted by a white family in the Deep South, and then finding national success that was made into an Oscar-winning film sounded too good to be true, well, he's now saying it was. NFL star Michael Oher says that the wealthy family who took him in hadn't adopted him after all. The paperwork they got him to sign was in fact for lucrative deals which benefited the couple he called Mum and Dad.
You have any place to stay tonight? Don't you dare lie to me.
Michael Oher's rags to riches story inspired the Oscar-winning film The Blind Side, tracing the journey of Michael from a homeless black foster child in Tennessee to an American football star after being taken in and adopted by the wealthy white Tui family.
We want to know if you would like to become part of this family.
Kind of thought I already was.
Except that the real-life Michael Oher claims he's discovered the Tuis never adopted him. Instead, he says he was asked to sign a conservatorship and only found out in February his adoption had been a lie. Despite that, in an interview promoting his new book yesterday, he said he was grateful for the help.
You have to understand the things that I went through and had to go through to get to that point, just from 3 years old to 18 when I moved in with the Tuis family, who I'm grateful for letting me stay my senior year there.
Court documents asking for the conservatorship to be terminated are reported to state at no point did the Tuis inform Michael that they would have ultimate control of all his contracts, and as a result Michael did not understand that if the conservatorship was granted, he was signing away his right to contract for himself.
They say that they needed the conservatorship so that they could get him admitted to a college. And that's just not true. They could have done an adult adoption. And even if it was true that they needed the conservatorship to get him into this college, why would they allow it to last 19 years later? Their story just does not add up in my mind.
Sean Tui says he and his wife Leanne didn't make any money off the movie, but they say they're going to love Michael at 37, just like they loved him at 16. Martha Fairley, News at 10.
The England rugby captain Owen Farrell has had his red card for a dangerous tackle on Saturday unexpectedly overturned. Farrell was originally given a yellow card for this challenge on the Welsh flanker Tane Basham. It was later uprated to red, but a disciplinary panel today upheld the original decision. It means Farrell will, after all, be able to lead England into their first World Cup match in 3 weeks' time. Finally, to the rather more imminent World Cup match involving an England team, the Lionesses football semi-final against Australia. It is just over 12 hours away. Their day of destiny to make it into their first World Cup final has already dawned down under, where it's 7:25 in the morning. Captain Millie Bright says they are determined to embrace the occasion, and it is certainly no time to count chickens. But should England win, they would face Spain on Sunday morning.
A sing-along for the team doctor, who has mercifully had a quiet trip so far. All Lionesses were fit to train today, a squad within touching distance of a dream that has eluded every other England football team for 57 years, namely reaching a World Cup final.
As players, we embrace these moments, and it's all about us just, like I said, sticking to tasks, executing the game plan, and embracing the moment. It's a semi-final, it's a World Cup. You want that environment, you want it to be tense, you want it to be noisy.
This venue has hosted many iconic moments. Johnny Wilkinson's kick to win the Rugby World Cup was one, and Australia's face of the Sydney Olympics, Cathy Freeman's stunning 400-metre gold, is another. Both teams have the opportunity to add to that roll of honour this week. Tomorrow this place will be dripping in green and gold, and the vast majority of the 75,000 inside here will be desperate for the Lionesses to lose. So England's first challenge is to silence the crowd and start to spread fear and doubt through the Australian team. This sports-mad country is beside itself with anticipation. Will that expectation inspire or intimidate the players?
The amount of support that we have from all over the country has been absolutely unreal, and they're really like a 12th man out there for us, and I really do believe they've gotten us over the line on more times than once.
Pat Cummins, Australia's cricket captain, who knows what it takes to beat England, said today there's no better feeling when you do.
There's nothing more satisfying than, as an Aussie, kind of getting one up on our English mates.
And Nick White, the Wallabies Rugby World Cup scrum half, admitted losing would be hard to bear.
Not only is it a big game in a World Cup here at home, but against an opposition, so against the big brother, and hopefully we go up.
England now know if they win, Spain awaits on Sunday. But there's a sizable job to do before then, taking on a team in unstoppable form with an entire country behind them.
And Steve is in Sydney, where it is the morning of match day now. Hi, Steve. Huge anticipation there, no doubt. But as you were saying, it's going to be hard to silence that crowd because it's going to be a hostile place to play for the Lionesses.
Absolutely, Rageh. If you think 75,000 in that stadium tonight, and a few thousand will be supporting the Lionesses, but that can work, one of two ways. Of course, if you're an Australian player, it can inspire you, it can elevate your performance. But then the other side is, I've seen so many teams in the past on the night crushed by that expectation, crushed by the pressure of expectation. So that's what the Lionesses will be trying to exploit. They'll try and start fast, try and dominate the game, and to try and silence the crowd. Millie Bright said as much yesterday, and she really believes that the Lionesses are going to thrive in that sort of environment. One big positive for the Lionesses, of course, tonight is that they've been to a semi-final in a major tournament before, and they won it. That was the Euros, of course, and they went on to win the tournament. But one word of caution, perhaps, relating to recent history. Now, Sarina Wiegman has been in charge of the Lionesses for 37 games. She's only lost one of them, and that was, against Australia. So that's bound to be on both players' minds when they walk out onto the pitch tonight. One thing I can guarantee, whoever you support, it's going to be a nail-biter.
It's going to be a real nail-biter. Huge, huge day. Thanks so much, Steve. That's it for tonight. Good luck, and to the Lionesses. We'll be back tomorrow at 10 with the reaction for the result. Till then, good night.
Today we'll see warmer temperatures moving in from the east, especially around tea time. Heinz no added sugar beans sponsors ITV National Weather.
A promising few days ahead. Some lovely sunny spells, just a little patchy cloud and feeling so much warmer than of late. Temperatures set to climb in the next few days. A quiet night ahead, just a few rogue showers across eastern Scotland, parts of Northern Ireland, and a touch of mist and shallow fog forming across rural spots of the north and the west. A little grey and murky for those up bright and early in rural locations. Otherwise, clear skies and plenty of perky sunshine from the word go. We start the day on a relatively mild note, and as that strong August sunshine gets to work, warming up quite nicely. Just a few fair weather clouds bubbling up through the course of the afternoon. These melt away again later, and certainly not enough to spoil things. Temperatures doing very well in that afternoon sun. Just a little more cloud for central Scotland with a few showers, but we keep some sunshine here too, and highs of 25 or 26 degrees. A similar theme into Thursday, a touch warmer, a little more sunshine, highs of 26 or 27 degrees by then. See you soon.
Heinz no added sugar beans sponsors ITV National Weather.